She was a homeless woman forgotten by the world until fate led her to a child in danger. He was a billionaire, powerful yet broken, until she saved his daughter's life. But when gratitude turns into an undeniable attraction, will love be enough to bridge the gap between their worlds? The wind howled through the empty streets of New York City, carrying a biting chill that sent shivers down Alina's spine. She pulled her tattered coat tighter around herself, but it did little to shield her from the cruel winter night. Her fingers trembled as she clutched a small cup of lukewarm coffee, her only source of warmth. She had bought it with the last few cents she had earned from helping a street vendor clean his stall. The city lights sparkled around her, a world she once belonged to but was now merely an outsider looking in. Alina had never imagined she would end up homeless. Once she had dreams, big dreams. She was in her final year of medical school when life took a cruel turn. A betrayal from someone she trusted had cost her everything: her career, her savings, and her home. With no family to turn to, she found herself on the streets, surviving day by day. Despite everything, she hadn't lost hope. But hope was fragile, and every passing day tested its limits. That night, as she sat on a bench in the park, staring at the sky, the stars twinkled above her. But they felt unreachable, just like her dreams. She sighed, pulling her knees to her chest, wondering how much longer she could keep going. Just then, a sharp, terrified scream shattered the stillness of the night. Alina's head snapped up. The scream belonged to a child. Her instincts kicked in immediately. She jumped to her feet, scanning the park. In the dim glow of the streetlights, she saw a little girl, no older than 6, struggling against the grip of a tall, masked man. The girl was kicking, thrashing, her voice filled with pure terror. Help me, she cried. Alina didn't think, she ran. Her heart pounded as she sprinted toward them. The man was dragging the child toward a black van parked at the curb, his hand clamped over her mouth to muffle her screams. Alina acted purely on instinct. "You let her go," she shouted, her voice filled with a strength she didn't even know she had. The man turned, startled, but he didn't release the girl. Alina's gaze darted to the ground. A broken bottle lay nearby. She grabbed it and lunged forward. The man hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. With all her strength, she swung the bottle at his arm. He grunted in pain, loosening his grip just enough for the child to break free. The little girl ran straight into Alina's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. You're safe now," Alina whispered, holding her close. The masked man, realizing he had lost, cursed under his breath and sprinted toward the van. Within seconds, the vehicle sped off into the night, disappearing into traffic. Alina didn't care. All that mattered was the trembling child in her arms. "Willie," a deep, desperate voice echoed through the park. Alina turned to see a tall, strikingly handsome man running toward them. His expensive black suit was slightly disheveled, and his dark eyes were wild with panic. The little girl lifted her head from Alina's shoulder. "Daddy," she sobbed. Alina barely had time to process before the man scooped the child into his arms, holding her tightly. His entire body was shaking. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" he murmured, his voice breaking. Lily nodded weakly but clung to Alina's sleeve, refusing to let go completely. And then it clicked. Daniel Kingston? She had seen his face on billboards and magazines. A self-made billionaire, CEO of Kingston Enterprises, one of the most powerful men in the country. And now he stood before her, not as a billionaire, but as a father who had almost lost his child. His gaze finally shifted to Alina, his expression unreadable. He paused, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved my daughter." Alina opened her mouth to respond, but felt overwhelmed by his piercing gaze. His presence was commanding, almost intimidating, yet there was something raw and vulnerable in his eyes. "She was in trouble," Alina finally said, her voice soft but steady. "I did what anyone would do." Daniel shook his head. No, not anyone. He took a step closer, studying her. In the dim streetlight, he noticed the worn out coat, the faded jeans, the exhaustion in her eyes. He realized she wasn't just a passerby. You're homeless, he observed, his voice gentler now. Ah, Alina stiffened. She wasn't ashamed, but the reminder of her circumstances stung. "We manage," she said quietly, looking away. Daniel exhaled. His heart was still racing, the fear of losing Lily lingering in his chest. He had spent years building an empire, protecting everything he owned. But tonight, all his wealth had meant nothing. His daughter's safety had been in the hands of a stranger, a woman who had nothing, yet risked everything. Lily suddenly reached out and held Alina's hand tightly. "Don't go," she whispered. Alina looked at her, startled. Daniel saw the way his daughter clung to this woman, seeking comfort. He had never seen Lily this attached to anyone outside their family. It made his decision easy. "Come with us," he said to Alina. Alina blinked. "What?" "I can't let you sleep out here. Not after what you did for my daughter. Please, just for tonight, let me help you." Alina hesitated. The offer was tempting, a warm place to sleep, food, safety, but it also terrified her. She had learned not to rely on kindness, not to expect anything from the wealthy. But then Lily tightened her grip on her hand, her eyes pleading. "Please," the little girl whispered again. Alina's heart softened. "Just for one night," she told herself. "Just this once." And with that, she followed them toward the sleek black car waiting at the curb, unaware that stepping into that vehicle would change her life forever. Alina sat in stunned silence, staring at Daniel. His words still echoed in her mind. "I want you to stay as Lily's personal caregiver." It was tempting, too tempting. She had spent years fighting for scraps, struggling for survival, and now a man like Daniel Kingston, a billionaire who had the power to change lives with a single decision, was offering her a chance to step out of the darkness. But was it real, or was she simply stepping into a new kind of trap? Alina folded her hands in her lap, trying to steady herself. "Why?" she finally asked, her voice quiet but firm. Daniel didn't hesitate. "Because Lily needs you." His deep voice carried sincerity, but there was something else in his expression, something raw and unspoken. Alina shook her head slightly. "She's your daughter. She has everything, the best caregivers, nannies, people who are qualified to take care of her. I'm just..." She trailed off, glancing down at her worn-out clothes. Daniel leaned forward, his sharp eyes pinning her in place. "You're just the woman who risked her life to save her, the woman she trusts more than anyone." Alina swallowed hard. The way he was looking at her, it made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in years. "I don't belong in this world, Daniel," she whispered. Something in his gaze darkened at the way his name rolled off her lips. He was used to people calling him Mr. Kingston. Detached, respectful, but from her, it felt different. "You belong where you're needed," he murmured. Their eyes locked, a slow, burning tension crackling between them. She should refuse, she should walk away. But then Lily's small, sleepy voice called out from behind them. "Alina." Alina turned to see the little girl rubbing her eyes, standing in the doorway. Lily blinked up at her with innocent trust, then, without hesitation, ran straight into her arms. In that moment, the last of Alina's resistance crumbled. She wrapped her arms around Lily and whispered, "Okay, I'll stay." That night, Alina was given her own room, a guest suite so large it could fit an entire shelter inside it. She ran her fingers over the soft sheets, inhaling the faint scent of lavender. Everything felt surreal. A few hours ago, she had been lying on a cold park bench. Now, she was inside one of the wealthiest homes in the city. But even with all the luxury, it wasn't the mansion that unsettled her. It was Daniel. The way he had looked at her, the intensity in his eyes, the way his voice softened when he said her name, there was something dangerous about a man like him, too powerful, too commanding. Um, but there was also something else, something magnetic, and she wasn't sure, which scared her more. The next morning, Alina woke to the sound of soft knocking on her door. She opened it to find Daniel standing there, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit. His dark hair was slightly tousled, like he had run his hands through it one too many times. For a moment, she forgot to breathe. I wanted to check if you're comfortable, he said. Alina nodded. It's more than I could ever ask for. His eyes swept over her, lingering for just a second too long. She was wearing simple pajamas provided by the housekeeper, but under his gaze, she suddenly felt exposed. She crossed her arms, shifting under his scrutiny. What's the schedule for today? A flicker of amusement passed through his eyes. You don't have to sound so formal. She lifted an eyebrow. You're my employer now. Something changed in his expression. He didn't like that. I'm not just your employer, Alina, he said quietly. I'm also the father of the girl who adores you. The way he said her name made her stomach tighten. Before she could respond, Lily came running down the hallway. Daddy Alina, she beamed, grabbing both their hands. Let's have breakfast together. Daniel chuckled, a rare, genuine smile breaking through his usual controlled expression. Alina felt something stir in her chest at the sight. He was breathtaking when he smiled, and that scared her even more than anything else. Breakfast was unlike anything Alina had ever experienced. The dining room was enormous, with towering windows letting in golden sunlight. The table was lined with everything: fresh fruits, pancakes, omelets, pastries. Daniel saw the way his daughter clung to this woman, seeking comfort. He had never seen Lily this attached to anyone outside their family. It made his decision easy. Come with us, he said to Alina. Alina blinked. What? I can't let you sleep out here, not after what you did for my daughter. Please, just for tonight, let me help you. Alina hesitated. The offer was tempting, a warm place to sleep, food, safety, but it also terrified her. She had learned not to rely on kindness, not to expect anything from the wealthy. But then Lily tightened her grip on her hand, her eyes pleading. Please, the little girl whispered again. Alina's heart softened. Just for one night, she told herself. Just this once. And with that, she followed them toward the sleek black car waiting at the curb, unaware that stepping into that vehicle would change her life forever. The wind howled through the empty streets of New York City, carrying a biting chill that sent shivers down Alina's spine. She pulled her tattered coat tighter around herself, but it did little to shield her from the cruel winter night. Her fingers trembled as she clutched a small cup of lukewarm coffee, her only warmth. She had bought it with the last few cents she earned from helping a street vendor clean his stall. The city lights sparkled around her, a world she once belonged to, but was now merely an outsider looking in. Alina had never imagined she would end up homeless. Once, she had dreams, big dreams. She was in her final year of medical school when life took a cruel turn. A betrayal from someone she trusted had cost her everything: her career, her savings, her home. With no family to turn to, she found herself on the streets, surviving day by day. Somehow, her work and anchor helped her find, despite everything, she hadn't lost hope, but hope was fragile, and every passing day tested its limits. Just as she was lost in thought, a sharp, terrified scream shattered the stillness of the night. Alina's head snapped up. The scream belonged to a child. Her instincts kicked in immediately. She jumped to her feet, scanning the park. In the dim glow of the streetlights, she saw a little girl, no older than 6, struggling against the grip of a tall, masked man. The child was kicking, screaming, her voice filled with pure terror. Brutal. "Hey, help! Help me!" she cried. Alina didn't think. She ran. Her heart pounded as she sprinted toward them. The man was dragging the child toward a black van parked at the curb, his hand clamped over her mouth to muffle her screams. Alina acted purely on instinct. "Let her go," she shouted, her voice fierce, filled with a strength she didn't even know she had. The man turned, startled, but he didn't release the girl. Alina grabbed a broken bottle lying nearby and lunged forward. The man hesitated just for a second, but it was enough. With all her strength, she swung the bottle toward his arm. He grunted in pain, loosening his grip just enough for the child to break free. The little girl ran straight into Alina's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. "You're safe now," Alina whispered, holding her close. Oh, can't tell you yet. And the masked man, realizing he had lost, cursed under his breath and sprinted toward the van. Within seconds, the vehicle sped off into the night, disappearing into the traffic. Alina didn't care. All that mattered was the trembling child in her arms. Going. A deep, desperate voice echoed through the park. Alina turned to see a tall, strikingly handsome man running toward them. His expensive black suit was slightly disheveled, his dark eyes wild with panic. The little girl lifted her head from Alina's shoulder and cried, "Daddy!" Before Alina could react, the man scooped the child into his arms, holding her tightly. His entire body was shaking. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" he murmured, his voice breaking. Lily nodded weakly but clung to Alina's sleeve, refusing to let go completely. Alina suddenly realized who he was. Daniel Kingston. She had seen his face on billboards, in magazines. A self-made billionaire, CEO of Kingston Enterprises, one of the most powerful men in the country. And now he stood before her, not as a billionaire, but as a father who had almost lost his child. His gaze finally shifted to Elena, his expression unreadable. You, he paused, his voice thick with emotion. You, he paused, his voice thick with emotion. You saved my daughter. Alina opened her mouth to respond, but felt overwhelmed by his piercing gaze. His presence was commanding, almost intimidating, yet there was something raw and vulnerable in his eyes. "Uh, she was in trouble," Alina finally said, her voice soft but steady. "I did what anyone would do." "Oh," Daniel said firmly, shaking his head. "Not anyone." He took a step closer, studying her. In the dim streetlight, he noticed the worn-out coat, the faded jeans, the exhaustion in her eyes. She wasn't just a passerby. "You're homeless," he observed, his voice gentler now. Alina stiffened. She wasn't ashamed, but the reminder of her circumstances stung. "I manage," she said quietly, looking away. Daniel exhaled, still cradling his daughter. His heart was still racing, the fear of losing Lily lingering in his chest. He had spent years building an empire, protecting everything he owned, but tonight all his wealth had meant nothing. His daughter's safety had been in the hands of a stranger, a woman who had nothing, yet risked everything. Lily suddenly reached out and held Alina's hand tightly. "Don't go," she whispered. Alina looked at her, startled. Alina felt out of place, but Lily sat beside her, happily chattering, making her feel a little less awkward. But the problem wasn't Lily. It was Daniel. He sat across from her, watching her too closely. His gaze wasn't just observant, it was intense, like he was studying every little detail about her. "Do you like the food?" he asked, voice smooth like velvet. Alina nodded, carefully picking at a piece of toast. "It's incredible." Daniel leaned forward slightly. "When was the last time you had a proper breakfast?" Her breath hitched. He wasn't asking to humiliate her. His tone was genuinely curious. She swallowed, not meeting his eyes. "It's been a while." Silence stretched between them. And then softly he said, "You don't have to worry about that anymore." Alina looked up at him. His words weren't just about breakfast. They were a promise. And the way he was looking at her made her heart pound. After breakfast, Lily ran off to play, leaving Daniel and Alina alone in the grand hallway. She turned to leave, but Daniel stopped her. "Wait." She turned, her pulse quickening as he stepped closer. "There's something else," he said. His voice was low, almost hesitant. "I know this isn't easy for you, being here, accepting help." Alina nodded slowly. "I don't want to be a charity case." His jaw tightened. "You're not." She lifted her chin. "Then what am I?" He exhaled sharply, stepping even closer. Too close. For a moment, they just stood there. Her breath shallow, his eyes locked onto hers. His hand lifted slightly, as if he wanted to touch her, but held himself back. "You're someone I trust," he murmured. And suddenly, she was too aware of everything. And she wasn't just working for Daniel Kingston. She was falling into something she wasn't ready for, something that could destroy them both. The days that followed were unlike anything Alina had ever imagined. She settled into her new role, caring for Lily, but nothing about her life felt simple anymore. Because Daniel Kingston was always there, watching, observing, getting closer. At first, she thought it was just her imagination, but then she started noticing the small things, how he always found an excuse to check on them when she was with Lily, how his gaze lingered on her for just a second too long during dinner, how his voice softened when he spoke her name. And worst of all, how she was starting to feel drawn to him. One afternoon, Alina and Lily were playing in the mansion's vast garden. The sun painted everything in a golden glow, and the soft laughter of the little girl filled the air. "Hi, Alina," Lily giggled as she swung back and forth. Alina smiled, pushing the swing gently. "All right, but hold on tight." For a moment, everything felt light, normal, but then she felt it, the unmistakable presence of someone watching. She turned, and there he was. Daniel stood a few feet away, his hands in his pockets, his dark eyes fixed on her. Not on Lily, on her. Her heart skipped. "How long have you been standing there?" A slow smirk tugged at his lips. "Long enough to know Lily's having the time of her life." Alina turned back to the little girl, her cheeks warming. Lily grinned. "Daddy, push me." Daniel chuckled, stepping closer. "All right, but let's make it fun." To Alina's surprise, he lifted Lily off the swing and spun her around in the air. The little girl squealed with joy, and for the first time, Alina saw him differently. Not as a billionaire, not as an untouchable figure, as a father, a man who, beneath all the wealth and power, was just trying to love his daughter the best he could. And something in her heart softened. After Lily went inside for her afternoon nap, Alina stayed in the garden, lost in thought. She barely noticed when Daniel came up behind her. "You're good with her," he said, his voice low. Alina turned, startled at how close he was. "She's easy to love," she said softly. His gaze darkened. "So are you." Alina's breath caught. There it was again, that tension. She tried to step back, but Daniel reached out, his fingers brushing against her wrist. The touch was light, barely there, but it sent a shock through her body. Elena looked up, her heart pounding. "Daniel!" He held her gaze, deep, intense, unwavering. "Tell me you don't feel this," he murmured. Elena swallowed hard. She should say no. She should pull away. But she couldn't, because she did feel it. Um, More than she wanted to admit. That evening, Daniel insisted they have dinner together. Lily was already asleep, leaving just the two of them. Alina hesitated at first, but something about the way he the way he looked at her, made it impossible to refuse. The dining room was dimly lit, the golden glow of candles casting soft shadows. The air between them felt charged. Daniel poured a glass of wine and slid it toward her. "I don't usually drink," she admitted, taking the glass hesitantly. His lips quirked in amusement. "You don't usually live in a billionaire's house either." Alina chuckled. They fell into easy conversation, something that shouldn't have been easy, but was. She found herself laughing at his stories, surprised at how human he was beneath his cold exterior. And then, when she least expected it, he reached across the table, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The room stilled. Alina froze, her pulse racing. Daniel's fingers lingered for a second too long, his gaze dropping to her lips. He was going to kiss her. She felt it in the way he leaned in the way his breathing slowed. And for a moment, she wanted him to, desperately. But reality crashed back in. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I should check on Lily," she whispered, barely able to look at him. Daniel didn't stop her. But as she turned to leave, his voice stopped her in her tracks. "This isn't over, Alina." She closed her eyes, willing her heart to stop pounding, because she knew he was right. It wasn't over. It was just beginning. Alina rushed to her room, closing the door behind her as she pressed her back against it. Her heart was pounding. She touched her cheek where Daniel's fingers had brushed against her skin. The warmth lingered, making her feel something she shouldn't. What was happening to her? She wasn't supposed to feel this way about him. Daniel Kingston wasn't just a man. He was a billionaire. He was powerful, unreachable, and yet, when he looked at her the way he did, when his voice softened in a way it never did for anyone else, she felt something real, something terrifying. But she couldn't allow herself to fall for him, because men like Daniel didn't fall for women like her. Did they? Underscore, 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 sorta, or following you on Instagram, or underscore, 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 underscore really got. Meanwhile, Daniel sat alone in the dimly lit dining room, swirling the wine in his glass. He wasn't a man who lost control, ever. And yet tonight he almost had, with her, Melina, the woman who had walked into his life by accident, the woman who had risked her life for his daughter, the woman who was nothing like the women he was used to. She wasn't chasing his wealth. She wasn't playing games. She was real, and that scared him. Because if he let himself get too close, if he allowed himself to feel too much, he wouldn't be able to let her go. Underscore, 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 period underscore person stupid Google slash Google Assistant and study their profiles. And the next morning, Alina woke up to the sound of hushed voices outside her door. I don't understand why she's still here, a woman's sharp voice said. She saved Lily's life, another woman responded, softer but still firm. That doesn't mean she belongs here. Alina's chest tightened. She recognized the first voice, Veronica Sterling, Daniel's business partner, a woman who had always been rumored to have an interest in him. Taking a deep breath, Alina stepped out, her presence immediately silencing them. Veronica's cold blue eyes scanned her from head to toe. You must be the woman everyone's whispering about, she said, voice dripping with disdain. Alina squared her shoulders. I take care of Lily. Veronica's lips curled in amusement. Is that all? The implication was clear. Before Alina could respond, a deep voice interrupted them. That's enough, Daniel. He stepped into the hallway, his presence instantly commanding the room. His dark eyes flickered toward Alina before settling on Veronica. Veronica tilted her head. I'm just looking out for you, Daniel. A man like you needs to be careful who he lets into his life. Daniel's jaw tightened. Alina is not up for discussion. Something in his voice made Alina's breath hitch. Veronica's expression darkened, but she said nothing more before walking away. Alina turned to Daniel. She's right. His brows furrowed. She's right, she repeated. I don't belong here. Daniel stepped closer, too close. His scent, his warmth, his presence. Everything about him made her knees weak. You belong where you're wanted, he said, and I want you here. Why did those words feel more dangerous than anything else? Underscore, 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 underscore. Um, that night, a storm raged outside. The wind howled, rain pounded against the windows, and lightning split the sky. Lily had fallen asleep, but Alina couldn't. She stood by the window, watching the storm, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. A soft knock on the door made her turn. Daniel. Her pulse quickened. You should be asleep. His lips curved into a smirk. So should you. She exhaled, turning back to the window. I can't. Silence. Then, softly, because of what happened last night, her stomach tightened. She didn't answer. Daniel took a step closer. She could feel him. The heat of his body, the intensity of his gaze. And then suddenly, she felt his fingers brush against hers. A touch so soft, so hesitant, yet it sent fire through her veins. She turned her head, and he was right there. So close. Too close. His eyes darkened. Tell me to stop. Her lips parted, her heart hammering against her ribs. She should tell him. She should step away. But she didn't, because she didn't want him to stop. And that terrified her more than anything else. Underscore, 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 underscore. Daniel lifted a hand, his fingers grazing her cheek. A shiver ran down her spine. Alina, he murmured. Her name never sounded like that before, like a plea, like a promise. She swallowed hard. It was dangerous. His jaw clenched. I know. Silence stretched between them. A storm raged outside. But inside, the only storm was between them. And before she could stop herself, before she could think, she closed the distance between them. Their lips met in a kiss that shattered everything. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, hungry, years of pain, of longing, of denying what they both felt. It all exploded in that single moment. Daniel's arms wrapped around her, pulling her close. She melted against him, her fingers tangling in his shirt. And for the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel. But deep down, she knew this wasn't just a kiss. This was the beginning of something neither of them could control. And once they crossed this line, there would be no turning back. Alina woke up alone. The soft golden sunlight filtered through the curtains, painting warm patterns on the bed she had barely slept in. Her lips still tingled from his kiss. The memory of last night hit her like a wave. Daniel's hands gripping her waist, the hunger in his kiss, the way he held her like he never wanted to let go. It had been reckless. It had been dangerous. It had been everything. But now, in the cold light of morning, reality settled in. Daniel Kingston was not just any man. He was a billionaire, a father, a man who belonged to a world she had no place in. And she was just Alina, a homeless woman he had given shelter to. The weight of that truth crushed her. Underscore, 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 underscore. When Alina stepped into the grand dining hall, she immediately felt the shift. Daniel was already there, sipping his coffee, his expression unreadable. Lily was happily munching on her pancakes, unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. Alina sat down carefully, trying to ignore the way her heart ached at the sight of him. Was he regretting last night? Daniel barely looked at her as he cut into his toast. The silence stretched, suffocating. Lily, sensing the tension, glanced between them. Why aren't you talking? She asked innocently. Alina forced a smile. We're just still waking up, Speed. Daniel finally glanced up. Their eyes met. Something flickered there. Something he was trying to bury. But she saw it, and it made her chest tighten because she realized something. He was pulling away. Underscore, 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 underscore. I feel like I feel like this is I hear the scream of our souls and I want to answer them. I want to answer this question. Later that afternoon, Alina wandered through the mansion, lost in thought. Her heart was a mess. Her mind screamed at her to leave before things got worse. And then she heard the whisper. Two maids stood near the hallway, their voices hushed but sharp. It was only a matter of time before Mr. Kingston got bored of her. Alina's blood ran cold. The other maid sighed. She was stupid to think she was different. He's had models, heiresses, women who belong in his world. But a former homeless woman? Please. Alina's hands trembled. I bet he was just being nice to her because of Lily, the first maid continued. Once he's done feeling guilty, she'll be gone, just like the rest. The rest. That word echoed in her mind, like she was just another woman in a long line of meaningless flings, like she was disposable, like she was nothing. She couldn't breathe. underscore 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 underscore. That night, Alina made the hardest decision of her life. She couldn't stay. Not when she knew deep down that she would always be an outsider in Daniel's world. She packed what little she had, her heart aching with every movement. Then she did the hardest thing of all. She wrote a letter. Danielle, I should have never stepped into your world. I was foolish to think I belonged here, even for a second. You and Lily deserve. I'll never forget what you did for me, and I'll never forget last night. But this was never meant to last. Take care of her and take care of yourself, Alina. Her hands shook as she placed the letter on his desk. Then, with tears streaming down her face, she slipped into the night, leaving behind the only place that had ever felt like home. Underscore 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 underscore. um I think it's more of a sort of like Daniel returned late that night, exhausted, but the moment he stepped into his office, something felt wrong. And then he saw the letter. His heart stopped. With trembling fingers, he unfolded the paper, his eyes scanning the words that ripped him apart. She left. She left him. His jaw tightened, his fists clenching. No, this wasn't how it was supposed to happen. She wasn't supposed to leave. Damn it, Alina. Without wasting a second, he grabbed his phone. Find her, he ordered his security team. His voice was ice, but his hands shook. She could be anywhere, sir. His head of security hesitated. Daniel's voice was deadly. Then look everywhere. As there was no way in hell he was letting her go. Not now. Not every underscore 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 nego um uh days passed, then weeks. Alina found herself working at a small cafe in a quiet part of town. She had started over again, but nothing felt right. Every time she poured a cup of coffee, she thought of the lavish breakfasts at the Kingston estate. Every time she saw a little girl smile, she thought of Lily's laughter. And every time the door to the cafe opened, her heart leaped, expecting it to be him. But he never came, because why would he? She had made her choice. She had walked away, even though every piece of her heart screamed that she had made a mistake. underscore 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 underscore. Um, I guess as a student, that was uh I guess it was a mind-blown story. One rainy evening, the cafe was nearly empty. Alina stood by the counter, staring out at the downpour, lost in thought. And then the door opened. A rush of cold air swept in. And standing there, soaked, powerful, furious, was Daniel. Her breath hitched. She was dreaming. She had to be. But then he took a step forward, his dark eyes blazing. Did you really think I wouldn't find you? Her world spun. Daniel, she whispered, his jaw clenched, his wet shirt clinging to his broad frame. He was a mess. And for the first time, she saw it. The pain in his eye, the desperation, the love. He wasn't here as a billionaire. He wasn't here out of pity. He was here because he couldn't live without her. Alina's chest tightened because in that moment, she realized neither could she. Underscore, 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 under audience of, oh crap. I think it's Comic-Con knew it too, of any of like 10 or 15. Alina stood frozen behind the counter, her hands gripping the edge as if it were the only thing keeping her from collapsing. He was here. Daniel Kingston, soaked from the rain, his dark hair messily falling over his forehead, his broad shoulders rising and falling with each heavy breath. His eyes burned into her with an intensity that made her chest ache. Did you really think I wouldn't find you? His voice was low, rough, angry, but also something else, something she didn't dare name. Alina swallowed hard. This wasn't how she imagined seeing him again. Not here. Not like this. Not with so much pain in his eyes. She opened her mouth, but no words came. So he took a step forward, and then another. The space between them was disappearing. And so was her ability to breathe. Underscore, 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 underscore. Underscore, 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 underscore. A lot of people slipped. I think a lot of people, Daniel stopped just inches away, his presence overwhelming. His sharp, chiseled features were tense, his jaw clenched as if he was fighting every emotion, threatening to break free. Tell me something, Alina, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. She swallowed. What? His fingers curled into fists. Did you mean any of it? She blinked. What are you? The letter, he cut her off. The way you left. Like I meant nothing to you. Like what we had. He exhaled sharply, his pain visible now. Like it was just a mistake to you. Alina felt like the air had been punched out of her lungs. It had never been a mistake, not even for a second. But how could she tell him that? When she had left to protect her own heart? Her silence made his expression harden. Say it, he challenged, stepping even closer. Tell me it meant nothing, that I meant nothing, that Lily meant nothing. Her breath caught. Lily. She had tried so hard to move on, but every night she dreamed of that little girl's laugh and of him. Alina looked away. It doesn't matter, Danielle. His fingers suddenly reached for her chin, tilting her face up until she had no choice but to look at him. It matters to me. Her heart cracked open. Why did he have to say things like that? Underscore, 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 underscore. underscore 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 uh tears burned in her eyes and she hated that he could see them. She was supposed to be strong, but Daniel Kingston had always been her weakness. You don't get it, she whispered. Then make me understand. His voice was rough, desperate, like he was holding on by a thread. Alina shook her head, tears falling now. I left because I had to, she confessed. Because I didn't belong in your world. Because I overheard people talking about me like I was just some woman you felt sorry for. Daniel's eyes darkened. Who said that? It doesn't matter. It does to me, he growled. Because they were wrong. Alina inhaled sharply. Daniel's hands tightened at his sides. Damn it, Alina, he exploded, his voice raw with emotion. You think I let just anyone into my life? You think I kissed you because I felt sorry for you? That I let you care for my daughter because I thought you were helpless? Alina flinched at the force of his words, and then he shattered her completely. I let you in because I had no choice, he admitted, his voice thick. Because you walked into my life and made me feel things I had no damn right to feel. Then his breath hit. Daniel took a shaky breath, running a frustrated hand through his damp hair. You think I didn't fight this? He continued. I did. I tried. I told myself you were just Lily's nanny, that you were just a woman who happened to be there when I needed help. His voice dropped lower, rougher. But every damn time I saw you, I forgot how to breathe. Alina felt herself trembling. Every time you laughed, I wanted to be the reason for it, he confessed, stepping closer. Every time you looked at me, I wanted to pull you closer. And every damn time you walked away, I wanted to chase after you. Her heart was no longer hers. He had just stolen it completely. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she couldn't speak because she was drowning in him. And for the first time, she wanted to stay lost. Underscore 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 underscore. Um, I think um I think I saw my practice of wealth being linked to compassion. Daniel exhaled heavily. I know you think leaving was the right thing to do, he whispered. But you were wrong. Alina closed her eyes. She had been wrong about so many things. Daniel's warm fingers suddenly reached for her hand, lacing them with hers. And she let him, because for once she wanted to hold on. To him, to them. His other hand brushed against her damp cheek, wiping away a tear. I love you, he murmured. Ah, the words sent a shockwave through her. She looked up, her lips parting, not sure she had heard him right. Daniel's dark eyes softened. I love you, Alina, he repeated, firm and certain. Tears streamed freely now, because she had never believed those words could be meant for her. Say something, Daniel whispered, his forehead resting against hers. Alina inhaled shakily. And then, finally, she said the one truth she had been too afraid to admit. I love you too. Daniel let out a shaky breath, a sound so raw, so filled with relief that she thought her heart might burst. And then he kissed her. Underscore 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 underscore, 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 unusual. My favorite phrase, my favorite phrase. I said this to myself in the morning while I was putting my makeup on. This time, it wasn't desperate. It wasn't rushed. It was slow, deep, like he was pouring every unspoken word into it, like he was claiming her completely. And she let him because she was finally where she was meant to be. As they pulled apart, Daniel pressed a kiss to her forehead, his arms still holding her tightly. "You're not leaving again," he whispered against her skin. Alina smiled softly. "No," she promised. "I'm not." Alina felt weightless. Her head rested against Daniel's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. For the first time in years, she felt safe. His arms wrapped around her tightly, as if he was afraid she would disappear again. But she wouldn't. Not this time. Not when she had finally found where she belonged. Daniel pressed a soft kiss to her forehead. "You're never leaving me again," he murmured against her skin. Alina smiled softly. "Never." And she meant it. Underscore, 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 underscore. Um, uh, one of so many things, but a few days later, Daniel brought Alina back to the mansion. Lily ran straight into her arms, squealing with happiness. Elena laughed, hugging the little girl tightly. "Missed you so much, sweetheart." Lily pulled back, her big, innocent eyes sparkling. "Does this mean you're staying forever?" Elena felt her heart swell. Before she could answer, Daniel's deep voice interrupted. "Yeah." Elena turned, her breath hitching as Daniel stepped forward. He placed a gentle hand on Lily's head. "She's staying with us. Forever." Lily beamed, throwing her arms around both of them. And for the first time, they felt like a real family. Underscore, 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 underscore. I don't want to say go for it. But I would say understand your internal expectations. Of course, their reunion wasn't without challenges. News spread fast. The billionaire had fallen for a former homeless woman. Society gossiped, the media speculated. Veronica tried one last time to intervene. "She doesn't belong in your world, Daniel," she said coldly. "She'll ruin your reputation." Daniel's expression was deadly. "She belongs with me," he said firmly. "And if anyone has a problem with that, they can leave." Veronica scoffed. "You're willing to risk everything for her?" Daniel's lips curved into a smirk. "She is everything." And just like that, the world's opinions stopped mattering because he had already made his choice. And his choice was Alina. Underscore, 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 underscore. Uh, Woohoo! The most successful women in sport athletes were Pete Stevens, Carolyn Vale. One evening, Alina sat in the grand garden watching the sunset. Daniel joined her, sitting close. He reached for her hand, lacing his fingers with hers. I never asked, he murmured. What do you want, Alina? Out of life? She smiled softly. I used to dream of being a doctor, of helping people. Daniel's eyes softened. Then let's make that happen. She blinked. What? His grip on her hand tightened. I'll support you in whatever you want to do. You saved my daughter, Alina. Now let me help you rebuild your life. Tears welled in her eyes. No one had ever fought for her before, but Daniel did. And at that moment, she knew this wasn't just love. It was home. Underscore 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 underscore. A few weeks later, Daniel took Alina on a private trip to a beachside villa. The waves crashed gently against the shore as they walked under the moonlight. And then he suddenly stopped. Alina turned to find him kneeling before her, holding a ring. Her breath caught. Alina, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I don't care about your past. I don't care what the world says. All I know is that I love you. Tears spilled down her cheek. Will you marry me? Alina let out a shaky laugh. Daniel, His eyes darkened with something vulnerable. You don't have to say yes, he whispered. Just don't leave me. She cupped his face, smiling through her tears. I'm not going anywhere, she promised. And then she kissed him. Deep, slow, forever. When they pulled apart, she whispered against his lips. Underscore 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 underscore. um I I think it's really funny to me that um, their wedding was small but magical. Lily was the flower girl, giggling as she tossed petals. And when Alina walked down the aisle, Daniel's eyes never left her. Because for the first time in his life, he wasn't chasing money, power, or control. He had everything he had ever wanted. And as he took her hand, pulling her in for their first kiss as husband and wife, he knew this wasn't just a new chapter. This was the best beginning of all.